So, good morning, and first of all, thanks to Tina for inviting us from Stokab. I wanted to comment on one of the things that she said earlier on. It's really important for telcos and regulators and governments to collaborate together. You're very lucky in Europe that you're surrounded by other countries that you can talk to and that you can coerce with, and you can get ideas from around your region. In New Zealand, we have two neighbours. One is Australia, the other one is Antarctica. So the broadband penetration rate currently in Antarctica is currently a little bit slow. So we were asked to give an update on both Australia and New Zealand. So we did call our friend in NBN Co, the CTO of NBN Co. So we've got some of his slides here as well. Unfortunately, I didn't know who to call in Antarctica, so I've got no slides from Antarctica today. How does this work? Same problem. Okay. So, welcome to New Zealand. Beautiful land of mountains, beaches, fantastic wine, and hobbits, dwarves, and elves. I don't know what to think when your country is most famous for mythical characters rather than anything else we do. Maybe we should work with the Swedish games industry and make fantastic games together about mythical characters. So this is the Tongariro National Park. This is Mount Naraho in the background. It's a volcano. It's active, and we ski around there, so it gives you an idea of the mentality of New Zealanders. But you're probably wondering why I'm talking about volcanoes. This is one of the very famous and very few straight roads we have in New Zealand. So moving on from mountains and volcanoes and hobbits to telco, we don't have many straight roads in telecoms either. So this is the banks of our biggest lake. We have a very large lake called Lake Taupo, and the path to open access fibre and even open access copper in New Zealand has been a little bit like this rather than the previous slide. It's been a little bit winding and continues to be so. So we're going to tell this story. Topics today, I'm going to give you an overview of what's happening in New Zealand, a brief overview of what's happening in Australia, and I'll talk briefly about some of our challenges. There are many, many challenges in building fibre to the home networks, but I'm just going to talk about these three later on in the presentation. I've got two Apple devices, it's great. So why the van? Why are all our slides got the van on them? Chorus is the face of telecoms in New Zealand. The RSPs, the ISPs, they're not out with the customer. We're out with the customer. We do the provisioning, we do the maintenance, we do the fixing of the network. It's our van that everybody sees down the street. And why is this so? Because we are basically the open access provider in New Zealand, and I'll tell the story of why it's come to be like this. So, the birth of Chorus, it had to happen somewhere. The chopping in two of the national telco. It happened in New Zealand. We knew it was coming, but it was a bit of a surprise to everyone, ultimately, when it happened just over 2 years ago. It's a bit like Swedish Midsummer, yeah? You all have Swedish Midsummer, and 9 months later, lots of babies arrive. You know it's coming, but it's a bit of a surprise, yeah? Who was born in March or April? Yeah, half the room is born in March or April, yeah. So what is the reward of separating the national telco into two halves? To be able to partake in a PPP, a public-private partnership with the government to build a fibre network. It's not a stimulus. Nobody is giving us cash. It's a public-private partnership. So who are Chorus? We're New Zealand's biggest fixed-line provider. We have 1.8 million lines, 1.2 million of which are broadband lines. FTTN is the past. We built a very good FTTN between 2009 and 2011, so we're overbuilding FTTN with FTTH. So today I'm going to tell you about UFB, but quickly just to talk about RBI as well. RBI is the Rural Broadband Initiative, and this is a stimulus paid for by the National Telecoms Levy, and this is 3,500 kilometres of fibre, 1,000 new cabinets, and interestingly, fibre to base stations for Vodafone to provide rural fixed access as well. So that's all I'll say today about the rural stimulus, but just to give you the idea, it's not just about urban, it's also about rural as well. So, a bit like the model in Sweden, we're open access. Everybody can access on equal terms, and it's not just fibre, it's copper networks as well. And it's not just the physical infrastructure, it's also the bitstream. So every ISP and every customer, not just ISPs, but other wholesalers, can access Chorus's network. I mean, we try and make it easy, not just for the big guys, we make it easy for the small guys. And the government regulation and the pricing is also designed to make it easy for the small guys and to make it easy for the big guys. So we're building the future. We're building New Zealand's fibre future. We're building 20,000 kilometres of new fibre down the streets, and it's called the Ultrafast Broadband programme. And it's not the kind of programme that is happening hidden underneath the streets. You know, we're working with the public, we're telling them when we're coming, we're advertising the fact of what we're doing, we're telling them what we're doing. It's a big, big deal in New Zealand, and not just from a physical build perspective, but also from a political perspective. We have an election in November, and you can imagine, you can imagine how important this is. So, the map. Just a statement. We're passing one premise for every 1 minute of every working day for 8 years. I'll say it again. We're passing one premise for every 1 minute of every working day for the next 8 years. That's a lot of building. 24 towns and cities, 44,000 streets, 5,500 discrete projects for the program managers amongst you out there. Or more interestingly, we're running 500 projects all around the country, all at the same time, for the next 8 years. This is a very, very big project. We're not connecting the houses, we're connecting on demand. As we get uptake, we connect the houses. Does anybody know where this is? Is it Stockholm? I have no idea. I have no idea where it is, but I found this picture on the internet and I liked it very much because it's nothing like New Zealand. This is New Zealand. We live in huts. In New Zealand, we live in wooden huts. And you know, it sounds quite funny, but we're building fibre to the home to wooden huts. They have 20-metre frontages. You know, I heard this week that 90% of your fibre is to MDUs, multi-dwelling units, and 10% is to villas. We're the other way around. We have 80% to villas and 20% to MDUs. So it gives you an idea of the scale of what we're doing in New Zealand. We're digging up roads. We're not putting fibre in ducts in big cities, connecting up MDUs. Really interesting conversation this week in Sweden. Everyone's been arguing about how much the user should pay for connection. 2,000 euros, 3,000 euros. I heard somebody paid 5,000 euros to connect fibre. In New Zealand, they pay nothing. The user pays nothing to connect fibre. We pay to connect all the fibre. So I'd love to get 500 euros or 1,000 euros for some of the very difficult gardens we have to connect. So where are we? It's an 8-year build. We're 1/4 of the way through. It says 830 on here, not 1 million. It's 830 premises, which is 1 million addresses, which reflects the MDUs. $1.8 billion to build this, half of which is our capital, 900 million. The other half is an agreement with the government. Half is debt, half is equity on a preferred basis. So the government is not giving us money. They're loaning us money, and they're taking an interest in the company that we can buy back at a later date. So this isn't a stimulus, just to give the idea of how much money we're spending as a company and how much is actually being invested by the government. So this is Auckland. How do we build? We build around priority premises. We build schools, we build hospitals, we build businesses, and then we build out. You can see on the map where the hospitals and the schools are by the colour of the map. And we tell the users 1 year, 2 year, 3 years ahead of time where we're going to build. There's a lot of excitement about having fibre. When can I have fibre? Who can have fibre first in New Zealand? It's very important, even though we do have a very, very good fibre to the node network. So for the economists and the pricing and the regulators amongst you, the pricing. Our government's been quite innovative and smart. Where's the camera? Our government's been quite innovative and smart. They wanted to drive uptake early on in the program. They wanted to set the input pricing for the product less than copper. Yeah, so basically the basic product is not 100 megabits per second, it's 30 megabits per second, but we have 2 regulated products we must provide, 30 and 100. And the copper pricing is in between the two. So again, it's a very interesting way. You notice that they converge at the end. So the idea is that by 2018, 2019, people want 100 megs, not 30 megs. So the plan comes down, and the 30 meg plan goes up, and everyone starts to migrate. To give you an idea now, 3/4 of the connections are 3010, 1/4 are 100 megabits per second. So quite smart, quite a good idea. So quickly moving on to NBN Co. This isn't my area of expertise, but I'll give you an idea of what's happening at NBN Co so we can compare and contrast. NBN Co are not a private company, they're a government company. They're a new government company who have a similar challenge to us about building fiber to the premises network, but they're not a private company, so they have different kinds of challenges. Like Chorus, they're a wholesale company. They sell bitstream and they sell fiber, dark fiber. But they've been going through a lot of change, and I'm sure you've been hearing in the news about the change that's been happening in Australia. So they're moving from FTTH partway through the plan to a mixed technology model. It was 93% FTTH, and now I've heard this phrase in the conference this week about the toolbox. So what's happening in Australia is they're putting more tools in the toolbox. They're using fiber to the home, they're building fiber to the node, they're using the cable network that belongs to Telstra, they're using fixed wireless, and they're using satellite. It's more complex, but it's more cost effective. That sounds a little bit like an oxymoron, more complex, more cost effective, but the numbers say that by using the existing technology, they can actually bring down the price. So how many? Very, very similar to Chorus. They've passed about 250,000 premises, and you notice that all of these are fiber, because everything they've done so far has been fiber and based upon fixed wireless. Nothing yet is FTTN, and nothing is HFC. And the reason for this is they've been going through a strategic review in the country. It's been based upon deployment timeline. When do we deploy? And it's been based upon technology mix. And they've studied very deeply the options. They've taken a pause in their program. They've continued building fiber to the premise, but they've taken a pause. And they've said, it takes a long time to get to 100 megabits per second, so let's make sure that most of the country can get 25 megabits per second or get 50 megabits per second. And their objective is saving cost. So they chose scenario number 6. So back to Chorus, just quickly to run through some of our challenges. We mentioned the road has been winding and not easy, so I'll just give you an idea of why the road has been winding and not quite so easy. 3 challenges: scale, flexibility, and certainty. Of course, there's so many more, but these are really the 3 things that Chorus faces that are the biggest challenges right now to our business. So scale. This is not a telco project. When you build FTTN, it is a telco project. This is a civils project. This is a build project. This is not building telco. Benoit said earlier on in the week that telcos overestimate their existing capabilities. They don't really understand what is required to build this kind of network. He's right. It took us 2 years to really normalize, bring on the people, get the skills into the company, and be able to actually build properly. We said several hundred civil crews working in parallel in the field together. Yeah, so the ramp-up's been huge. In September 2011, we had 1 civil crew in the country building FTTH. Now we have almost 300. So in 2 years, we've had to build up the skills, build up the people, work with local enterprise to build this up. It's been a huge challenge to build this scale and to learn how to build FTTH, and people really do underestimate it. So it really is a factory. And there's lots and lots of challenges in doing this factory and doing this build. It's new at scale, new people. Building MDUs are a real challenge. You seem to find it easy. We find it a big challenge. Yeah, getting into the MDU, building new cabling, working with the body corporate, working with the building owners, building inside cabling inside MDUs. It's a very, very complicated process. Rights of ways. Some people say you cannot come down our road. You cannot come down my driveway to build fiber. Very, very difficult. Stakeholders, back to Stokab. You're lucky in Stokab because you are the local authority and you can work with the local authority. We have to work with 24 local authorities, 24 power companies, 24 transport authorities, and trying to get these people to agree is very difficult. And sometimes they want some of the money that is coming from the government to try and help. And provisioning as well. You know, we mentioned that we pass the properties, but we don't connect them. So you've got to learn how to connect these properties. Some are easy, aerial. Some are easy, going through existing duct, but other ones you've got to dig up the garden, you've got to go through concrete driveways. It's very, very difficult sometimes and expensive to connect properties. So, yeah. There's been a lot of talk about the toolbox. In New Zealand, we only have one tool in our toolbox. It's a spade. We cannot do anything else. We can't do FTTB. We have to do FTTH. You know, don't get me wrong. We're very much bought into fibre. We believe in fibre. But when 400 people in an MDU cannot get fibre because we must provide 4 ports of open access, 4 ports of voice, and it must be on fibre, you can imagine that we're frustrated, the government's frustrated, and the users are also frustrated. So this little bit of lack of flexibility does affect sometimes the uptake. And our regulator is highly technical. I don't know how yours is, but they help us specify how we build the network, they test our network, they help us specify how we connect our network, and they measure the performance of our network. So we have a very, very highly technical network. The CEO of Scanover, can I say Scanover in this room? I don't know. he said earlier in the week that the market decides technology, and I really like this. The market decides technology. In New Zealand, the regulator is deciding technology. So what we would like is some flexibility to solve the problems and to increase uptake and to get past these frustrated users. So finally, last point, certainty. To invest for 10 years in a massive, massive civils project, you need certainty. You must have steady revenues. You must have very, very carefully planned capex. You must have a clear return on investment. You're building for 10 years. You absolutely must have stability. So my point. Remember we talked about the pricing. The government was very innovative, very smart. They got it right. The pricing model was right. You notice the copper input pricing is in the middle of the 2 fibre plans. However, in the past we laid down some laws around copper pricing, and the fibre contracts came later. So this is what happens when the old laws, there are laws, there's nothing we can do about it, they are laws. When the old laws are enacted and a telecoms review takes place and the price goes down and another part of government feels that their fibre project has now been undermined by the price of copper. So in Australia they have a problem of technology and a problem of what do they build, and they're getting through this. In New Zealand we have a problem of alignment of interests. Are we building fibre or are we building copper? And what I would say is, does New Zealand want cheaper broadband or does New Zealand want better broadband? Because this price doesn't just affect urban. If the revenues of the open access provider go down, where do they not spend? Probably in rural. So it really does affect the rural input. So again, certainty is extremely important for a company like Chorus to be able to run a 10-year enormous civil build program. So finally, to conclude, it's not all negative. We're a very positive company. We really do want to push the take-up of open access fibre in New Zealand. And I really like our new strategy. Simple phrase, your imagination plus our network equals infinite possibilities. And thank you, I'll leave it there.